Once again, they will gather on stage. Once again, they will seek to impress America with their leadership skills. Add to it all a campaign racked with allegations of fraud, a candidate who can't wait to unleash one-liners, and the big bad media lurking in the corners. Seek to find the last time a major college football team stood together and forced a university president to resign, and then seek to decide how a university president is supposed to stop individuals from showing racist colors. The half-truths and non-truths emanating from the White House over the Keystone Pipeline and more. The Obama hypocrisy that rips across the Beltway and that some American voters fall for every time. And the terrible cost for America. Christie may have been handed the greatest favor possible in being taken off the main debate stage Tuesday night. Let us then consider the worth of these so far laughable events. Promising there will be no canned electronic laughter at the debate, despite the fact, yeah, there maybe should be. I'm Ed Berliner, and this is The Hardline for Monday, November 9th, 2015.
Vetting is one thing. Going through a person's entire life because you can't find a scandal and saying, well, you said this, 20 years ago, and you said this 50 years ago, and this happened, and this. I mean, my point being that you could do that every single day from now until the election, and I could get distracted, and I could deal with all of those things, or I can deal with what's important.
In what should be a chance for American voters to hear from the candidates and take those words in helping them decide who should become the Republican presidential nominee, the latest GOP debate would seem to have already descended into nothing more than attacks on the media, discussions of witch hunts, and tirades about equal time on a late-night entertainment show. Will Tuesday night change the dynamic and finally provide the clarity needed to decide who's telling the truth and who just wants the big chair on Pennsylvania Avenue? Prepare the hand buzzers and spit cups because we're going in. Let's begin with the veteran writer for the National Review Online and author of the New York Times bestseller Rise of ISIS, A Threat We Can't Ignore, David French. Let's add the creator of Tea Party Nation, who was inspired years ago by Ronald Reagan and will not have his wish to have a Reagan sound-alike tomorrow night. We can guarantee that. Judson Phillips. Gentlemen, I want to thank you both for joining us. David, I'm going to go ahead and begin with you. Ben Carson is gathering all the headlines now as we head for the debate on Tuesday night. He says it's all just a media witch hunt. The media claims we got you. Who's right and who's wrong?
Look, this is about 95% witch hunt, 5% anemic gotcha. What we have is the media going towards 40-year-old, 45-year-old, 50-year-old anecdotes, interviewing people who weren't there, who haven't been put forward by the Carson team as witnesses, and as a result, trying to find some discrepancies in accounts when the reality is there's a lot of corroboration for what Carson says, and the people who weren't there, who weren't put forward as witnesses, don't really doubt Carson's story anyway. It's a very bizarre thing. I don't recall seeing this really since 2008 Sarah Palin, where the attack was just as vicious, but from a slightly different angle.
Judson, let's come to you then, because let me play devil's advocate. There are those who are saying that regardless of what happened, whether it's 10 years ago or 40 years ago, it speaks to the character that's necessary to become president of the United States. Do you agree or disagree with that?
It does, but only to a very limited extent. And there is a shocking double standard because, part of this started out with Ben Carson's talking about, well, he was accepted to West Point or maybe he wasn't. Anybody remember the story that Hillary told that in 1975 she tried to enlist Marines? The same people who were screaming about Ben Carson forget about that or any number of Hillary's other scandals. So it's not as big of a deal as I think a lot of people want to make it out to be.
But is this media bias?
Sure it is, because we hear about Ben Carson's records, Ben Carson's history. How about Barack Obama's history? We still don't know a whole lot about him from his school records. Just about every record he's got has been sealed and is not in front of the public view. And guess what? The media that is so obsessed about what Ben Carson may or may not have done 45 years ago just doesn't seem interested in Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, or any of those folks. So, yeah, it is media bias.
So, David, let's take it the next step then. We get ready for the debate on Tuesday night. Undoubtedly, this is going to be a key point for some of his opponents. For instance, Donald Trump has pointed to what he calls Ben Carson's pathological disease in all this. Let me just ask you frankly then, is this something that Carson can overcome, or is this something that you believe is going to stick with him?
You know, a lot of it depends on his opponents. I mean, I think that if there are opponents who choose to say opportunistically that there have been questions raised about Carson without realizing that or caring that many of the, quote, questions raised are entirely bogus and examples of shoddy investigative reporting, incredibly biased perspectives, then they may be able to drag this out for a bit longer and damage Carson. But to do so would be self-defeating, because the idea that if this works on Carson, this kind of investigative method works on Carson, they're next. It's not as if Carson is sort of a unique character that the media will focus on to the exclusion of everyone else. The media right now is beginning to realize that if a conservative wins in 2016, the Democratic Party will be in a position of weakness unlike it's been in since just after the Civil War. So panic is going to start to set in if they believe that they could possibly lose. And if this continues, this witch hunt kind of mentality continues, and if other conservatives give it further life, we could see it for a while, and it will ultimately hurt all the conservative candidates.
I want you both to hear this real quick. Here's Armstrong Williams, an advisor for Dr. Carson. He was on MSNBC earlier today, and he responded to the allegations that Carson made that said he was being attacked by the media. Here's what he said.
He's an honest man. He's a decent man. He's a good man. And even in the vetting process, no one has proven anything to say that Dr. Carson has not been honest and that he's been inaccurate. And you and I both would agree, when you're trying to recall information from 40 or 50 years ago, it can become distorted and confused.
So, Judson, would you not say at this point that what Ben Carson has at least started to do today is what he has to do? He has got to come completely clean, completely clear. He's got to show the evidence. He's got to show whatever evidence he's had, because without that, it's going to be tough to shut down any partisan media. Yes?
Oh, absolutely. You know, as an old lawyer, I'll tell you, when you're starting to have to argue that the other side hadn't carried its burden of proof, you're losing and losing badly. And you're absolutely right about that. Carson does need to come clean on it. But here's the other issue for conservatives. You know, there's a lot of things Ben Carson has said recently that are very legitimate that they could really hit home on instead of these old things, like him saying Puerto Rico should be a state. I mean, hello, there's 2 more Democrat senators right there. And these are huge things that they could hit Carson on without even going into this other stuff that comes from 45 years ago.
So let's go ahead and change up here a moment. I mentioned Donald Trump a couple of minutes ago. Judson, I'm going to stay with you. Did you see Saturday Night Live?
No, I haven't watched Saturday Night Live in 25 years, and I saw no reason to change that pattern this week.
How about you, David? Did you see it?
I relegated myself to watching YouTubes of Trump sketches.
Okay.
So
now,
I saw
from what you
did,
saw from the Trump sketches, was it funny?
The only one that was really funny was the Drake music video parody. And it was funny, but decidedly unpresidential. I'm not really wanting to see the future leader of the free world dancing like that. The whole thing was just a farce.
Well, but let's say this, too. Bill Clinton's also the guy who played saxophone one night on the Arsenio Hall show. So let's say that there's a precedent set for this. So, Judson, I'll come to you on this. When it comes down to being presidential, does this hurt, harm, or make absolutely no difference whatsoever?
I think to a limited extent, a very limited extent, it hurts. Because what do most Americans, regardless of ideology, want? They want to be able to respect the office of the president. And, you know, the current occupant's not doing anything to help us respect the office. So we want somebody who's going to come in who can create that respect. And when you're doing these kind of funky, not so funny parodies on late night TV, it just doesn't do anything to help the image of you being presidential. And at the end of the day, that's what a lot of people vote on. The image, are you presidential material or not?
I got less than a minute left here. Boy, if only John Belushi was still alive. Imagine if he put on the bee costume. Very quickly, Judson, Rubio credit card data. Now it appears as if this is not, is it fair to say this is not a big a scandal as people wanted it to be? Because now they're talking about the fact that he repaid a lot of this money.
You know, it's probably not as big as a lot of people want it to be, but it's more serious than the Carson scandal, because it's $180,000 improperly charged, and that says something about his character and how he handles finances. So that's a bit of a bigger scandal, and I expect it to to grow some legs.
Last question, other side for you then, David. Here's something entirely different here. Mike Huckabee and Chris Christie are on what's called the kids' table right now. 20 seconds. You think maybe that might be a good thing for Christie at least now? Maybe he'll get heard.
No, it's a terrible thing to be on the kids' table. I mean, look, it's past time for some people to start dropping out of this race, and maybe being relegated to the undercard debate will spur some people to do that. I would like to see this race narrow down to 6 or 7 here in the next month or so, and then we'll begin to see who really has the support for the staying power. It has staying power.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you much. David, French, Judson Phillips, thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you both again very soon. We want to remind everybody that Newsmax's post-debate special immediately follows Tuesday night's GOP debate. It starts at 11 p.m. Eastern. The guest list included to be talk show host Michael Savage, Dick Morris, John Zogby, Craig Shirley, our own J.D. Hayworth, and many, many more. You will have a special web address to weigh in and vote on who won the debate. It's Tuesday night, 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific, right here on Newsmax. Stay with us. The fastest 60 minutes of news, The Hard Line, continues.